I want to talk today about why Microsoft canceled their upcoming handheld. And no, I'm not talking about the Asus ROG Xbox Ally or Ally X. That's a handheld PC. I'm talking about Microsoft's rumored, and it's important to note that this is just rumored, dedicated Xbox handheld that would play just Xbox games instead of PC games. That rumor has been going around for quite a long time, and now we have some new rumors that are about why Xbox actually canceled this device and decided to pivot and go with a handheld PC instead. And the answer is pretty simple. It's because the contract with AMD purportedly required Microsoft to purchase 10 million units of the chips that they wanted to put in them. Now, when you hear me say 10 million units, that doesn't seem like a lot when it comes to the console video game space. You look at the PS5, it shipped 77 million units since it launched. The Xbox Series X apparently has shipped 33 million units since launch. So when you look at a number like 10 million units of an Xbox handheld, that seems pretty doable. That is until you look at the numbers that handhelds have been doing, especially if you take the Nintendo Switch out of the equation. And I do think that you need to take the Nintendo Switch out of the equation. Nintendo is its own animal. It's really its own section of the gaming market. And because of that, you always have to analyze everything else with Nintendo kind of apart from that most of the time. Because the Nintendo Switch sold 150 million units. I can see why Microsoft would look at numbers like that and think, well, we should make a handheld too. But the Switch is just different, and that's something else that Microsoft had to keep in mind. And while I do think some people might look at the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox handheld and make comparisons between the two, I think more people would make comparisons to handheld PCs like the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally or the Ally X or the Lenovo Legion Go, Legion Go S, Legion Go 2, and make those kind of comparisons. And when you look at the way that those systems have sold, it's not nearly as well as Microsoft would hope, because the Steam Deck, they're the 800-pound gorilla in this equation. And that 800-pound gorilla is not really 800 pounds. It's more like a 100-pound gorilla, because the Steam Deck has only sold, these are old numbers at this point, but I don't think it's much higher than this. Maybe 4 million is what people were assuming about 6 months ago. And I think maybe at this point we might be at 5 or 6 or maybe 7 million units, but that's over the course of 3 years. So for Microsoft to look at the handheld market with Nintendo outside of the equation, it's clear that it is a very niche market. And I say that as somebody who loves playing games handheld, and I know that the people who are watching this video probably really like playing games handheld. We are all for handheld gaming, but at the same time, the vast majority of people who are playing games aren't, if you take Nintendo gamers out of the equation. And even if you include Nintendo gamers, about half of Nintendo people who are playing on Nintendo Switch, and probably also true with the Nintendo Switch 2, about half of those people dock it and never play it handheld. They just play it on their TV, which is how most console games get played, just on the TV. It's not a portable thing. It's always in the same room. It's always hooked up to the TV, and it's not something that you can take with you. And again, if we remove Nintendo from the equation and we just talk about handheld PCs, how can they survive when it comes to low numbers like even the Steam Deck, which is doing way better than every other handheld PC out there? Well, the reason that they can survive is because they don't have to have a dedicated library of games. They're just playing PC games, which are games that people already own. They don't need to buy new games for this system. So if somebody has, we'll say, a PlayStation, or you know what, even a Nintendo Switch. If somebody has a Nintendo Switch and then Microsoft launches the Xbox handheld that plays Xbox games, well, that means that they're not going to have a dedicated library of games already built into it when they purchase it. They're going to have to buy all new games. And the people who are already playing games on Xbox, well, they're going to have those games, but they might be hesitant to buy a new system from Microsoft, especially with everything that Microsoft has been going through lately. I mean, when you think about it, how much would this thing need to cost anyway? Especially when you look at the tariffs and Microsoft raising prices for the Xbox Series systems. The Series S started at $300 and now it's $400. The Series X started at $500. And you know, I'm going to go to the most extreme version. You can now buy a Series X 2 terabyte Galaxy whatever edition for $800. How much would the dedicated handheld have to be? Because whenever you buy a handheld, or whenever you build a handheld, you now have to add in a battery. You have to add in a screen. Your storage has to go down in size, and you know, everything gets more expensive when it's in a handheld. And Microsoft probably looked at that and they said, I don't think that we can make these for the price that would be cheap enough so that we could sell 10 million of these things without running the risk of having stuff sitting on the shelf not moving. Let's take a look at where this news is coming from. I got this from insidergaming.com. Tom Henderson wrote this article, and basically he got this information from Kepler L2, who they say is a reputable AMD hardware leaker. They reported that many AMD related leaks in the past. According to Kepler, Xbox dedicated handheld was canceled because AMD wanted a massive 10 million unit commitment for a dedicated SoC, that's a system on a chip. They also said it was said that the Steam Deck only selling about 5 million units and Asus, ROG, Lenovo, Legion only selling about 1 to 2 million units each. Microsoft didn't want to take that risk, and I don't blame them. And it's important to note, and this is also in the article, which I'll link down below, and you should absolutely read it because Tom did a good job summing this up. Basically, it said that, where was it? That Kepler said that this device was really early in development. It's not like something was close to the finish line and they decided to shelve it. So why is it that Microsoft wanted to make this device anyway? Well, for all the reasons that I already said, it makes perfect sense. But another reason that they wanted to make this device is because they have the Xbox Series S. And when the Xbox Series S launched, it forced developers to tune their games for lower end hardware. My friend Carrie, aka The Fox, who's like, he's this close to 100,000 subscribers, you guys. I'm going to leave a link to his channel down below. If just 200 people who watch this go and subscribe to him, he could hit 100,000 today, and that would be awesome for him. So if you're interested in like really deep technical analysis of hardware, he's the guy that you want to check out. I'm more of a news guy. Anyway, the Fox, he had this theory when the Series S first launched that the whole reason that they built the Series S was so that they could ship a handheld later in response to Nintendo. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think that a lot of times there are more than one ways to go with this. I think that really the real reason that they made the Series S is because they wanted to undercut Sony. And it seemed to make sense at the time, but on the other hand, it also made it really hard for developers to target that hardware, and that made developers a little more hesitant to put their games on Xbox systems because they were forced to target that lower end hardware. And when you combine that with the fact that Game Pass is on that hardware, and people who subscribe to Game Pass tend not to buy games on that platform. I know that there's definitely outliers, but I think that most people who have an Xbox Series system, they don't buy games. They just subscribe to Game Pass and play that way. And I know that I'm one of those people. There's only 2 games that I have on my Xbox Series X that I bought. All of the rest of the games that I played were on Game Pass when I was subscribed to that, which I unsubscribed shortly before they ended up raising the price of that as well. So it makes it kind of hard for Microsoft to stick with a handheld like that. And I have to say, I'm glad that they decided to shelve it rather than ship it and then just let it die on the vine anyway. Especially because that meant that Microsoft could shift more towards a PC focus by partnering with Asus for, and I never remember how it's phrased, it's either the ROG Xbox Ally X or the Xbox ROG Ally X. Whatever the order is, you guys can figure it out and let me know. But by pivoting to them, it allows Microsoft to just license the Xbox name, put it on these devices, and have Asus take all of the risk. But if you want to hear a more in-depth conversation about this, I'm sure that we're going to be talking about this on next week's episode of my podcast, which is always right here on YouTube. So if that sounds fun, make sure that you subscribe for that. And thanks for watching. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, everybody. Bye-bye.